It's finally here. The next chapter in the MonsterVerse, Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, is out. And we have a special review right here, right now for you on the Atomic Lizards podcast.
Welcome to Atomic Lizards. We're a trio of friends podcasting about the Godzilla franchise and other films we love. I'm Miranda, the film fanatic.
I'm Udi, the de facto film expert.
And I'm Dan, the Kaiju extraordinaire.
On today's episode of Kaiju Korner, we're covering Godzilla X Kong: A New Empire.
Picking up after the previous film, Godzilla vs. Kong, Kong establishes his territory throughout Hollow Earth and is on the search for more of his kind. On Earth's surface, Godzilla continues to defeat Titans around the world to maintain balance and protect his territory. Meanwhile, Gia and the others find a signal that leads them to Hollow Earth to unlock the secrets of the past and the destruction that will come.
Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire is an American film directed by Adam Wingard and produced by Legendary Pictures. It is the 5th film in the MonsterVerse franchise, the 38th film in the Godzilla franchise, and the 13th film in the King Kong franchise. The film stars Rebecca Hall, Brian Tyree Henry, Dan Stevens, Kaylee Hoddle, Alex Ferris, and Fala Chen.
This episode will have spoilers, so go watch it if you haven't. Now let's get started. What are your initial thoughts on this movie, Dan?
All right, what did I think of Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire? Well, let's see. The writing was dumb. There was nothing but just dumb monster action. It introduced some really crazy and stupid ideas, and I loved every single second of it. But I had such a good time watching this movie. It was great. Like, it really brought me back to Godzilla, to the Godzilla films that I watched growing up as a kid, and mainly the Showa era. It was great. Like, the storytelling that's being used for these kaiju is unlike anything I've ever seen in a kaiju movie before. They're really going out of their way to give some of these kaiju character, which I really like. The returning characters from Godzilla vs. Kong, like Rebecca Hall and Brian Tyree Henry, they're great. Of course, I still think that Bernie's still my favorite character, but Rebecca Hall left a much bigger impression on me in this movie than she did in the last one. You know what? I honestly didn't think the human storyline was that bad. I mean, obviously, you watch these films for the monster stuff. The monster stuff delivers, but I didn't think the human storylines were that bad either. Now, this movie does introduce some ideas that can be a little crazy, especially if you're not someone who's used to a lot of the older Godzilla films. So, like, it might take you a little bit aback, but if you've seen all the Showa era films and even a little bit of the Heisei era films, you're going to be right at home with this movie. It's great. Probably my favorite film in the MonsterVerse. It was awesome. What about you, Udi? What did you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. Me, this movie is very likely the best of the MonsterVerse for me personally. It hits in like a way similar to the older movies, kind of reminiscent of the Showa era, but not to that extent, I guess. To me, it was basically a modern reinterpretation of those movies, but, you know, more fun, more slick, more polished. Obviously, the kaiju sequences are way more crazy and advanced than anything they could have ever done back in the day. But I definitely feel like if Ishiro Honda had this technology then, like, this is the movie like he would be making, and that to me is really, really cool. This felt without a doubt like a Godzilla film, like through and through. This is a straight up old Godzilla kaiju film, and that's really, really cool. I definitely feel as though this has captured that spirit better than any of the other previous MonsterVerse films, and yeah, it's just super, super fun.
I agree with you in that this is probably what Ishiro Honda always envisioned back when he was working on a lot of those older Showa era films.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's very cool to finally get a modern especially American director, I guess, which I mean, for better, I guess, depending on who you ask. I mean, but I think it's really cool to finally get someone from the modern era who can capture that essence of the older movies while, making a brand new movie with a very American sort of centric a point of view, like in terms of filmmaking and everything like that. But yeah, I really liked it. I thought all the kaiju designs, sound design, fight sequences, all of that was really, really great. Just like the kaiju centric sequences where like you're getting a bit of their personality and character was really, really fun. And even I enjoyed this little band of human characters. I think definitely the most out of any of the other MonsterVerse projects so far. So very much looking forward to the future of the MonsterVerse and whatever Adam Wingard does next. What about you, Miranda?
She's beauty, she's grace, she'll spit silk in your face. It is Martha, the queen of kaiju. She's back and I love it. And I think one of you at one point asked me what would make my favorite Godzilla movie, and it's Mothra. So, I'm really, really excited that she's in it. But otherwise, other than Mothra, I mean, there's some other stuff that I like too. I really like the coloring on this movie is very colorful and vibrant. The colors seem to be like their pure hue. There's not like sad grayness and rain like 2014 Godzilla. I love the neon lights everywhere. I mean, I kind of predicted that, and it's not a hard call to predict that, but I just love seeing them. I love neon lights in films. And I bet they got a super deal on all of those LED lights. I like the tech. The main ship they use reminds me of something the Guardians of the Galaxy would have. And I like all their screens and like technologies that incorporate the neon lights. The plot is kind of simple and it focuses on like 5 characters. And you actually care about these characters. At least I actually care about them. While I was watching, I got several different vibes that connect to other movies such as Jurassic Park 3, Journey to the Mysterious Island. They walk around in a forest and or a different realm and come across old ruins. The usual jungle stuff. Journey to the Center of the Earth, as I've mentioned before, but in this case specifically the floating rock scene at the end when they're fighting and how Earth and the floating rock scene in Journey to the Center of the Earth from 2008. That's the one I'm talking about, not the other ones. I haven't seen the other ones, but there's also lava in that one and man-eating plants. So, like, obviously, connection. Also, they're in a different realm under the earth, so it just makes total sense. It has the vibe of those, like, random adventure movies and kind of fits in the same category as those that I have mentioned. It also reminds me a lot of the Godzilla Island films from the Showa era, not so much the other Showa movies, but specifically the ones where they're on an island. It just has that same, like, silly feel to them. And then Godzilla is in this movie, so it's always nice to see him. And I like the fact that he takes cat naps in the Coliseum. He's so sleepy. He just wants to be left alone. I liked his evolved design, and it included gills, which I don't think he's ever had before. And as I've mentioned before, I feel like the MonsterVerse is a way for them to keep making King Kong movies without actually doing that. So this one focuses a lot on Kong and his time and how Earth instead of Godzilla, which I'm totally okay with. Kong's character and his being can be more humanized, which helps for the viewer to relate to him more than they've tried to do with Godzilla, as I'm aware, like based off of the movies that I've seen about Godzilla. So it adds a little something different to like giant monster movies. And it's nice just to see that like other monsters are getting stories other than Godzilla, because it's always Godzilla's the main character, and it's just nice to see Kong be like the main character, and that's what happened with Godzilla versus Kong, and I'm glad they continued that into this one. So yeah, overall, had a fun time. It's just a fun popcorn watch. however you may interpret that, because it's different for everyone. But you know, it's a fun movie. So as I mentioned in my like initial thoughts, we have a movie that focuses around like 5-ish characters, some new, some old. We have some returning characters like Dr. Andrews, Gia, Bernie, and some new ones like Trapper and the UA from Hollow Earth. I want to kind of direct the conversation into how we feel about these characters, whether or not they were like well-rounded, if you guys found them interesting. I know you guys find some characters in the Monsterverse to be really annoying at times. So I think we should just kind of jump in on how we feel.
Well, before we even start fully discussing everyone, can I ask you, is your favorite character in this movie, is it Trapper?
Mothra.
Well, is your favorite human character Trapper?
It's Mothra.
Okay. I give up the rest of my time.
I mean, he's cool. I like the inclusion of him. He adds a bit of Australian. I think his accent's Australian. Like charm to this. I thought he was played by Aaron Taylor Johnson at first. And I was like, oh, hey, they just recast him as a different dude. Because they used to do that all the time with the Showa era and other movies, right? And series. They just recast the dudes to be someone else. It turns out it's not him, which is slightly disappointing.
Yeah, so to kind of go off of your discussion question, because you mentioned before that in previous Monsterverse, like I haven't been the biggest defender of the human stories in the other Monsterverse films. Like, I thought the human story was super boring in Godzilla 2014. I only liked probably like one or two characters from Kong Skull Island. The human story in King of the Monsters is terrible, and then the human story in Godzilla vs. Kong is kind of the same in how I felt about it in Kong Skull Island, where I only liked like maybe one or two characters and the rest were just there, and it's just being used as a device to get us to the next monster scene. Now, don't get me wrong. The human story in this movie is exactly that. It's just there to get us to the next monster scene. But I truly did not mind the human story in this movie. Like, yeah, is it stupid? Sure, but I didn't mind it. I don't think this human story's bad. Like, I think the human stuff in Godzilla 2014 and King of the Monsters, like, I think that's bad. What's going on here, I don't think is bad. And see, it's interesting because I'm sure, like, you talk to anybody who isn't well in tuned with the Godzilla franchise, they probably will think this is bad. I mean, a whole underground civilization that speaks to each other telepathically. I'm sure there's tons of people out there that find that stupid. But me personally, like, that would fit right in with the Showa era Godzilla films.
Yeah,
so
that fits right in.
Exactly, yeah. So like, I wasn't too bothered by that. So like, I can understand like why some people probably wouldn't vibe with that, but like, it was no skin off my back. But anyway, to get back to the human characters, yeah. So I don't think this story's bad. Is it a strong story like Godzilla -1, for example? Not really, but I don't think it's awful either, like King of the Monsters. So and yeah, these characters are great. I like these characters. I already mentioned in our Godzilla vs. Kong review that, you know, I liked Rebecca Hall. Granted, she didn't really leave that big of an impression on me in Godzilla vs. Kong, but I don't know, she just felt more important to the plot to me in this movie. Like, personally, like, I just felt like her character was more memorable to me in this movie. And then, you know, I love Bernie. Bernie's probably my favorite character from Godzilla vs. Kong, so I was very happy to see him come back. And yeah, he's full of like some very funny moments, and just, it helps make definitely helps make the human parts of the story very enjoyable for me. And then yeah, I mean Gia's cool. I'm glad they brought Gia back because I once again I liked her relationship with Kong, and it was nice to kind of see that relationship continue in this movie. And yeah, I liked Trapper. Trapper was hilarious. Like his his introduction was great, man, with like lip syncing to that song. It was awesome.
I loved Trapper's "I gotcha."
Yeah, exactly. I gotcha. Yeah. No, that Trapper was great. Thing that I really liked about Trapper's character is once again because this is interesting, like what they did with Trapper because having like a Titan vet, like a veterinarian that specifically focuses on these large animals, that's interesting to me. That's something that none of these kaiju films have ever really explored because I mean in most kaiju movies they're just destructive monsters, so like you have no need to have a veterinarian to like care for these creatures. But it's been established in this universe that creatures like Kong aren't always destructive. They're there to kind of help people. So like when Kong gets injured, you need to have someone to help him treat his wounds. So I thought the idea, much like how I like the idea of Rebecca Hall's character in Godzilla vs. Kong, her being like an expert on Kong species, I really like the idea of Trapper's character, this like Titan veterinarian. Like it's cool. I don't know. It's just not something I've ever seen before. But yeah, I thought the characters were interesting. I really enjoyed them. I didn't think they were too serious, but I also didn't feel that they were too over the top, that they were just silly. I mean, don't get me wrong, like Bernie definitely has a few silly moments here and there, but he's a comedic character, so it kind of fits in with his character.
Speaking of Trapper, I agree. I think having a veterinarian kaiju expert character is very unique to the story. It's like I don't think it's been done before. So just to have him be like there to take care of these monsters is really, really interesting. It also like helps, as I mentioned before, like humanize or personify. I think I'm using those words right. Kong and his story. He's like, yeah, he's in pain. He needs help. It's just a nice little thing that I'm glad they thought of. Because otherwise it'd be like really sad because Kong is just stuck in the Hollow Earth with his broken tooth and his injured hand, where now he has the ability to like go to the dentist and like get a mobility device, I guess you could say it is, so he can still use his hand and still live where he is living instead of living on Earth and having to fight Godzilla all of the time.
Yeah, I agree. I feel that they were able to make this sort of group of humans not only just like essential to the story and not just like as a vehicle for the audience, but also give them all personality and also intertwine these people and their roles with the monsters really well. So like you said, giving the kaiju a dentist or a veterinarian, like it's just like a fun little thing. Like again, to me it reminds me of something that they could have done in the Showa era and like it would fit right in with those movies. But I think it was you that said this, Stan, the other day when we saw it, that this is basically just a modern Showa era. Like, and yeah, I think that fits perfectly. And yeah, I agree. And just to keep the ball rolling, I'll just give my 2 cents on the characters. Me personally, I felt that Trapper was very Miranda coded. He just seemed like your kind of character, but I guess I was wrong. But for me, I really like Trapper.
He's cool. I mean,
He's not
my
Mothra,
favorite
though.
character in the Godzilla franchise is Mothra, so she's
Yeah.
gonna beat out everyone. But I really like the inclusion of Trapper. He's like a very interesting character. So, and with his
Okay.
songs and stuff, huh?
I said okay.
I mean, with his songs and stuff, that's where like the Guardians of the Galaxy vibe and the giant
Yeah.
tanks and the tech, and I'm like, yes, this guy. I like what they're doing for this movie. I'm liking what they're doing with these characters. I actually care about them.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And yeah, so Trapper was my favorite of the group. as you guys have been saying, I like this whole group. They all had their own quirks. Was how they all got together. I mean, like Dr. Andrews and Gia, like they make sense. You know, they're like technically mother daughter. Like bringing Bernie in felt like such a stretch. But I was like, I don't care. Like I love Brian Tyree Henry, so I was happy to see him back. And I was super excited to see what Dan Stevens would bring to the role, and I was not disappointed from the moment he showed up on screen. I was like, "Oh my goodness, yes, we are. This is going to be great." And he did not disappoint the whole time. Just like from his intro to his more down to earth moment with Dr. Andrews, kind of revealing very. I want to give this movie props for just like yeah, it's expository, but it didn't feel so heavy-handed of like, oh yeah, crazy. Remember when we dated? Gosh, that was so crazy. It wasn't like the most subtle thing in the world, but I feel like they made it feel a bit more natural than just being like, gosh, isn't it crazy we used to date? Oh my gosh, that's so insane, right? Ha ha ha. Like they just made it more playful and fun and like a bit more realistic. And again, like I'm not saying it's Oscar-worthy writing, but I appreciated that they were able to work that relationship in pretty smoothly, I would say. And they had, I think, pretty fun chemistry. And so yeah, so like seeing Trapper, Dr. Andrews, Gia, and Bernie all interacting like was just a good time. And then it really hit off when they got to the Hollow Earth and got to be there with Mitchell. And like you got that sort of like outlier character who did not mesh with them at all, and then he got handled in the proper way. He got eaten, which is good. And then they got to really shine, and especially Bernie and Trapper were such like a fun pairing. Like Bernie with his "I'm gonna kiss you on the mouth." I thought that was really funny. And yeah, just Dr. Andrews and Gia again, just I really love Rebecca Hall. I love her in everything I've ever seen her in. And even in movies as ridiculous as these, I feel like she really just does bring a very warm, grounded, down to earth vibe. And I feel like immediately she can just make you empathize with her and how she's feeling. She's really good at expressing her emotions either through facial acting and her tone delivery and her like voice performance and just like everything. And I think even though this movie is super over the top bombastic and just dumb, like she brings such a great human element to the story. And the story with her and Gia, again, it's not revolutionary, it's not a fantastic, phenomenal, life-changing story, but it's a sweet little through line in this crazy monster verse film. So I really liked all the characters. And to add to the point of like Mitchell going back a little bit, he was the only character that was too serious, I would say, but like it made sense. Like he's like the typical like, oh, I'm the big gruff military guy. You're gonna listen to me, blah blah blah. And then of course he got eaten. So like that was kind of played for laughs, I would say. Oh, I mean, not. I wouldn't say it. Like it was definitely played for laughs. So it was like nice to be able to like, all right, we got rid of the character. Cool, we can move on and just keep having fun. So that's how I felt.
One of my personal favorite moments, now that I think back to it, is when they're going down into the Hollow Earth for the first time. It's showing what that experience is like. I love the part where like Bernie, because like I think Trapper asks Bernie how he's doing, and like Bernie gives a thumbs up, but then it turns into like a thumbs down. That was really funny.
That's another part that my brain was like, hey, that's like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 when they go through the portals. So I like the inclusion of them showing actually how traveling through Hollow Earth works, because since the MonsterVerse is so weird and inconsistent, I'm glad that you're just like, yeah, this is how it's going to be for this episode or this movie, and it's going to be a fun time.
Yeah, I agree. You brought up this consistency, and I was about to say that of like, I like that since it was the same director, like for once, he was actually able to keep the same like quote unquote cinematic language of the traversing to the I always want to call it Middle Earth. It's the Hollow Earth. But like because they did that in Godzilla versus Kong as well. It was shorter, a shorter sequence, but it was also very like rainbowy and wild and wacky. But keeping that sort of similar visual language was a good touch in adding some sort of consistency to this ridiculous Hollow Earth thing. because as we've discussed in Monarch and other recent episodes we've done, they have not done a great job of sort of making the Hollow Earth make sense. But here, they established how to get there and everything to some degree in the previous movie, and I feel like they did a good job of maintaining some consistency there. So that was cool. I liked that. And then I thought the Barney thing was funny. Did you guys have any other favorite character moments with these guys? I know for me personally, aside from the moments I already talked about before, and then like obviously the sweet ending with Dr. Andrews and Gia, I think just like basically everything with like Trapper again, like I said before, and then kind of like how Miranda mentioned, I liked that. I don't know, like it kind of took me out of it a little bit, but I really enjoyed it and I had fun with it. I appreciated that they did kind of do a sort of a Guardians of the Galaxy Star-Lord thing with Trapper and like his music, and they incorporated the needle drops in a fun way. Because as I mentioned in the previous episode, I felt that Adam Wingard did a really great job with the needle drops. And here, I don't feel like I liked the songs necessarily as much as the previous one, but I feel like they were incorporated in a more fun way with Trapper and just like fun little moments and whatnot. So yeah, what do you guys think?
I really like Gia's storyline in this. And of course, it's connected to Mothra. But throughout the MonsterVerse so far, we've seen Mothra a few times. But like, her story is so particular, especially the Shobijin. And that's like one of the things that I was like missing from the other version of her. She shows up in King of the Monsters, right?
Yeah.
But not Godzilla versus Kong.
No. Yeah, you're correct.
Yeah, so in Godzilla King of the Monsters, that's something like that was missing from that movie, and she pretty much has Shobijin or fairies in every version I've seen of Mothra so far. So to have it kind of be magic without being like magic, to have Gia kind of represent that character within Mothra's story was a really good adaptation or really good version of doing that in this kind of more grounded world where magic doesn't quite exist. Like it does, but not in the way that it would necessarily in other versions of through the franchise. It's just it was really nice and I really liked it.
I want to cut in real quick. So you mentioned Mothra's Shobijin, the little twin fairies that's in like every Toho Godzilla movie. It was really easy to miss, and I forgot to talk about it when we were reviewing King of the Monsters, but there is a reference to Mothra's Shobijin in King of the Monsters. Do you guys remember that Chinese scientist that was part of Monarch? I don't remember the name of the character, but do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, and she's like, there were like, her relatives or someone were twins and they like looked after Mothra.
Exactly. That was the reference.
Yeah, that's a reference, but like they're not connected to Mothra other than studying her. So like for me, hey, cool. You kind of did something, but like it doesn't really include the magic part of it. But I do know what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, cool. Because I couldn't remember, like, I didn't know if you guys remembered that part of the movie, because it's kind of like if you're not really paying attention, like, you'll miss it. And I forgot to bring it up during our King of the Monsters discussion, so. But yeah, technically they are in King of the Monsters, but not in the way that you would think or, presumably would want either.
Yeah, just to add to that, that is like one aspect that also kind of added to the thing where I was saying earlier that these feel like Showa era movies or older movies. Like the whole plot of them finding the Iwi tribe in Hollow Earth and all of that really felt like Infant Island to me, like all those scenes. And then with like the fairies and Gia, like it just felt very reminiscent of all of that. And just to see that interpreted in this new light and in like with this modern technology and everything, like I found it really, really cool, again, just to see, like, to have watched the older movies and then to see this and be like, yeah, that's so cool. It just totally reminded me of that, and I really liked that aspect because, yeah, I totally agree, Miranda. And I said this to Dan the other day too, of Like, this is my favorite MonsterVerse movie now, and I still really like King of the Monsters, like the last few times that I watched it recently. And this doesn't make that one any lesser because it's better. I still really will. I'll probably still like continue to rewatch King of the Monsters, and I'll still enjoy it and like it for what it is. But I do feel like, especially Mothra, wasn't utilized effectively in that movie, and I do feel like this truly feels like bringing Mothra back from like the older movies, or like bringing her back to the modern era. Like she feels like Mothra, and that also encapsulates and incorporates, like what you were saying, the elements of the fairies and Infant Island and all that. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, she feels like Mothra, and she looks like Mothra. One of my sticking points on Mothra's design beforehand was that she wasn't fuzzy enough, and she looked too much like a butterfly. And then this one, she is fuzzy, and she looks more like a moth, and I love the fact that she's in gold the whole time. The blue was cool, but like gold, that is Mothra to me.
Yeah.
But yeah. So speaking of Mothra and her design, since there are tons of kaijus, let's talk about what we thought about Godzilla's evolution look, or maybe Kong's design, or our villain of the movie, Scar King. Like, I really liked Godzilla's evolved design. I love that he is spiky, he is very jagged, he's pink, which is great, and he has gills. And I don't think he's ever had gills before, and I find that such a interesting evolutionary like step for Godzilla. It's really cool to me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really noticed the gills on Evolved Godzilla. I have to go back and look out for those. But yeah, I agree with you, Miranda. I also like Evolved Godzilla's design. He looks really cool. He definitely lost a little bit of weight. And yeah, I didn't mind the pink scale, the pink like color grading for him either. Like I didn't mind that too much either. It's funny because at certain angles, the evolved design actually kind of reminds me of the 1998 design, and I thought that was kind of funny. So like just at certain angles it does. But yeah, I liked the evolved design. I agree with you. I think it looks cool.
I'll have to watch and see again on what angles you're referring to, because like I enjoy Godzilla 1998. So I'll be really interesting on why they've tried, or if they accidentally silhouetted him in that way, because that is a controversial movie. But that's an interesting observation.
I don't personally see it. I haven't watched that movie, but I've seen clips of Godzilla 90 and I've seen what he looks like. I didn't personally see it at all, but that is kind of an interesting observation. However, Thrice, I also really liked the new evolved Godzilla, just to throw my head on the ring. And I think that the pink coloring really was like something new that I never thought I needed or wanted, but I feel like it added something fun to this MonsterVerse Goji design.
Yeah, and to clarify, when I say that it reminded me of like the 1998 design, like I'm talking about just in terms of the way it moves at certain angles. Because yeah, if you take like a still image of the 98 Godzilla design and just look at the evolved Godzilla design, you're not really going to see the similarities. But just in terms of the way they like kind of move in certain scenes, that's kind of what helped remind me of it.
I gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. And I think going back to like the new evolved Godzilla, I think that the changes that they made, like Miranda said, like him being a little bit spikier and whatever, like were really cool additions just to make him look even more aggressive, whatever. But yeah, I feel like they made him a little too thin, mainly just in like the legs. Like I don't think he needed to be quite as thick as he was. Like I think in 2014 that he was super thick in the thigh region. But like I just feel like they could have made his proportions a bit more proportional, and I think that would have been fine. I don't think they needed to like super slim down his legs, which I mean, sure, like made him a bit more proportionate, but I feel like it made him look a little bit less Godzilla-y to me. But I mean, he still obviously looks like Godzilla. That doesn't mean he doesn't look like Godzilla. I just mean I feel like he didn't keep as much of a Godzilla like overall look compared to previously, but I still really liked it, and I think I'm excited to see him in the next movie and what he'll look like there.
And now you know why people don't like the 1998 design.
Fair enough.
The design is not that bad. It's not great. It's not that bad though.
Well, I'll somewhat agree with you, Miranda. It's not a great Godzilla design, but it's also not bad, because if it really was that bad, there's no way Toho would have approved it, because I think a lot of things people tend to forget about that movie is that Toho approved that design. Like, they did approve it, so it was good enough for Toho then.
Yeah, even though they disowned it when it came out, they did technically give the okay for it.
Yeah.
But to kind of direct back to the current movie, I think it's mentioned when Dr. Andrews is reading like the pictures in the cave in the Hollow Earth at one point, of like the prophecy or whatever. I think she says Godzilla to the Iwe is called the creature who ate a star, a monster who swallowed the sun, or something like that. And I think that's a very cool way to describe Godzilla. Godzilla is so connected to like the nuclear bombs and all of that jazz, but to see it as in a slightly different way and is a creature that has the power of like the sun to save them, since they were putting out a signal for help, and Godzilla is someone who can help them. I really liked that aspect of the story and connection to Godzilla and his character.
Yeah, after thinking about it, that is kind of a cool way to like see Godzilla get described. Because I wonder, now this is just me speculating, but I wonder if the reason why they call him the monster that ate the sun, I wonder if it's because that's how they interpreted his atomic breath. Like maybe to them that looks like starlight or something crazy like that. I don't know. I mean, I'm just spitballing here, but to me that makes sense. That's how an ancient civilization would describe like a creature like Godzilla. It's cool.
Yeah. And just to clarify, it was like the first time that you said it, Miranda, it was the monster who swallowed the star. Or I don't know if they said monster, but it was definitely like swallowed a star. But yeah, I agree. It was a very cool thing. And it definitely felt like one of those things of like you're watching like the History Channel and they'll be talking about how ancient cultures interpreted whatever things. Which also reminds me of that one part. I don't feel like enough people laughed at, and it needs recognition. The one part where they're like trying to explain something, and they're like, "Oh, who knows how this happened?" And then Barney just goes, "Ancient alien astronauts, or ancient astronauts, or whatever." And that got like a huge laugh out of me because it was like, "Oh, it's just like the aliens guy from Ancient Aliens." But yeah, I think that was a really cool way to describe Godzilla. And I don't know. Maybe, I mean, we've already got one alien in the MonsterVerse. Could it possibly, be insinuating that maybe we'll get more kaiju from space? I don't know. Maybe.
Space Godzilla. He's making a comeback.
I don't know. I was feeling Gigan. I think Gigan would be really cool, personally.
Yeah, but Space Godzilla has crystals and would totally match the vibe of Hollow Earth.
I have no horse in this race, but I just really want Mecha Ghidorah. And I know that the story is supposed to be kind of like an ender sort of antagonist. So until we get to the point of like the WB is never going to make more of these, then I can wait till then to see that. But I'm down to see. I mean, I'm down to see everyone. I just want more Toho monsters.
I as well would love more Toho monsters.
One other creature kaiju thing that I want to see in hopefully the next one, but if not, then hopefully like in the next few theoretical sequels, I want to see them make a Mechagodzilla 2. And I don't know, Miranda, if Adam Wingart's still in charge, maybe he'll have rainbow breath. I could see that happening.
I mean, with the way that this one turned out and the connection to the last one, I would love for this guy to keep making them. I think
Yes,
he's capturing what I like about the Showa films. And I don't care about Monarch. I don't care about the other ones. They're annoying and sad and depressing. I want fun, silly, rainbow-colored monster fights.
I agree with you guys. I would love for Adam Wingard to just keep making more of these movies. Like, yeah, that'd be great. I would love to see that happen. But yeah, you guys are tossing around some interesting ideas here. Like, I would also love to see another iteration of Mechagodzilla. I would love to see Mecha King Ghidorah as well. That would be really cool. They could pull
Yeah.
but it's interesting, Miranda, because you mentioned Space Godzilla. It would be really cool to see how they could do Space Godzilla, because in that movie's heavily connected to two other Toho movies in the Heisei era, Godzilla versus Biollante and and the Heisei version of Godzilla versus Mothra. Like, Biollante is partially the reason why Space Godzilla exists. So it would be interesting to see what they could come up with to kind of do their own spin on Space Godzilla. Like, that would be kind of cool. I would like to see Wingard pull that off. I think that could be interesting.
Just to make it clear, I know nothing about Space Godzilla, so what you just said there, I didn't know, but that's very interesting, and I'm looking forward to it. I just think he looks neat.
Yeah, that'll all make sense when we get to the Heisei era, but that'll be for another time.
I guess just like one last thing, I thought it was interesting, and I can't remember if either of you guys brought this up, but I thought it was interesting that his dorsal plates looked kind of like veiny, not in like a weird way, but like just like in the plates themselves, like they had kind of different shading. At least that's what it looked like. Maybe it wasn't, but I was like, oh, it's kind of interesting, like giving it more of like a, I don't know, like less of just kind of like an armor sort of just like spiky thing jutting out of him, and more like connected to his being. I don't know. Like it felt more biological, and I thought that was interesting. And yeah, I like that. But yeah, like I think MonsterVerse Godzilla just always looks really cool when he's glowing. I mean, all Godzillas look cool when they're glowing, but I don't know. Like he just looked so fierce with the like pink eyes, like in those close up shots, especially when I think it's when Kong comes up to try to recruit Godzilla. And I like that you get like the close-up shots of both their eyes, and you just see the glowing pink eyes. Oh, it was so cool.
Yeah, dude, that during that scene, like especially when he's like, well, because it is the scene where Kong surfaces to like try to, get Godzilla to join the fight, and yeah, it shows that part where it like just shows his eyes as he's swimming. He was pissed.
Oh yeah. One quick thing I wanted to mention that we're talking about this scene is that I appreciated again these kind of sort of callbacks or like adaptations of previous movies or whatever, inspired by whatever. But I liked that just like in the older movies when they tried to recruit Godzilla to help fight another kaiju, he was always resistant and he didn't just jump in. Like he always fought, and until he was basically beaten or just like beaten up, and they're like, "Hey, just help us, God!" And he'd be like, "All right," basically being forced into helping. And I like that they did this in that. They did that in this one again, where like Kong comes up and he's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Calm down, buddy. Like I'm just trying to get you." And he like tackles him, and they all fight and whatever. And it's not until like Mothra shows up and calms him down. And is like, "Hey, come on, help us out." And then he finally joins the fight.
To add on to that, somebody on Twitter made a glorious analogy. They're like, Godzilla in this universe is pretty much just an angry old like drunk guy who just wants to pick a fight with everyone, and it's like moth girlfriend to like calm him down and set things straight.
A moth has got to do what a moth has got to do.
I guess.
Mothra has had to convince Godzilla to fight on the good side and like be like, dude, stop. What are you doing? Calm down. We just want to talk. So the fact that they included that also is another thing that I was like, that's an exact moment in a show or film or something that I watched. I wish I remembered the names of all of them, but I don't. It's like the exact like same feel. And and that's yet another reason these movies feel like the Showa era.
Agreed.
Gonna keep beating this dead horse until it's even more dead. These movies, ever since King of the Monsters, have been and always will be modern day Showa era movies. And it's great. I love them for that.
Fascinating is that I saw a screenshot of the Rotten Tomato scores on the audience and the critics, and the ones that are fun, audience score pretty decent. Critics score not decent. But then the ones that the audiences are meh about, they have the higher critic score. So it's so interesting to see that switch, because the MonsterVerse has been kind of serious and now it's cheesy. And apparently critics don't like having fun, I guess.
Well, I wouldn't say that, because the score for Godzilla versus Kong is pretty high. It's almost in the 80s. And that's an interesting topic, because I was kind of already talking about this with Udi earlier. The difference in Rotten Tomato score for this movie and Godzilla versus Kong is kind of baffling to me, because Godzilla versus Kong score is so high. It's suspiciously high. It's almost at 80%. And the score for this movie is more in line of what I would feel critics would think. And it's I wonder why critics loved Godzilla versus Kong so much more than this movie, because I feel this movie, the things that critics didn't like in this movie, I feel they probably also didn't like in Godzilla versus Kong. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and to bring back a point that we were talking about earlier, that I mentioned to Dan, is that I truly do feel the timing of when GVK came out plays a pretty big factor in that, everyone was we're barely getting out of the start of the pandemic. We were just getting vaccines basically when the movie came out for the first time for COVID. So I think just being able to be back in the movie theater, getting our popcorn, well, I guess depending on if you wanted to eat or if you wanted to stay mass the whole time, I guess. But going to the theater, just having that blockbuster experience for the first time in a year, it was just so refreshing, just so nice. Just that movie really did feel special at that time. It felt just this thing that this feeling that we couldn't put into words, but just it just felt so nice to have back. And I feel at the end of the day, I don't think it's that critics, and just my opinion, I don't think it's that critics don't have fun or don't know how to have fun, but when you watch movies all the live long day, all the time, you do, your standards go up way higher and you become way more jaded way faster. And so I feel while people these critics, they can have fun with these movies or whatever, I do feel they need to have something special. And I can totally understand them not liking this one because it is just more over the top and ridiculous, whatever. But yeah, I do think the timing of GVK played a big factor with their enjoyment of it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Udi, and I just want to comment real quick as well on this whole critics versus audience discrepancy, because this is a huge topic on Twitter. Every time a popular movie comes out that doesn't get great critic reviews, critics are they're looking for good writing, good character development. They're there to critique a movie. Us as audience members, I mean, technically you could say we're also here to critique movies, but we're not professional movie critics. We're just doing this for the fun of it. Professional movie critics are always looking for stuff that meet their criteria in critiquing a movie. Us as audience members, we're just going to enjoy a movie. We're not looking for good cinematography, for good character development, good writing, good camera. We're not looking for all that. We're just looking to sit down and enjoy a movie. Movie critics are actively looking for that. So that's why they tend to be harsher on more audience-pleasing movies than more often than not. It's not because they hate these movies or they just hate fun or whatever. It's just they're just doing their job. Their job is to literally watch movies for a living. And like Udi said, when all you do for your job is watch movies, I'd imagine your standards would get pretty high at that point. And you start, and things that are trivial to them, or things that don't really matter that much to us get trivial and kind of annoying to them.
And yeah, to that point, like Dan said, like critics are like looking for all these things to critique a movie by, because they're like, you can critique movies objectively, and objectively, I would say this movie is a bad movie. But for Godzilla fans and for people who are just looking for like a fun, turn off your brain movie, because yes, that does exist. Not every movie has to be an Oscar-worthy movie. Not every movie has to have super compelling character arcs and whatever. Like, yes, does it make it better? Sure, but you don't go to see a movie about a radioactive atomic lizard because of the writing. I'm sorry, but you don't. Like, the three truly great Godzilla movies are few and far between, and they're anomaly. Well, the first one is an anomaly, it was by design. But like otherwise, Shin and -1 are anomalies. Like, that's cool experimentation, but I would go so far as to say that is not what the franchise really is, because there's so many more movies that aren't that I think the antithesis of that, like -1 and Shin and the original, like the original, obviously it kind of exists in its own realm, but like Shin and -1, like they're fantastic movies and whatever, but I feel like they're not true Godzilla movies in the sense of compared to the other ones. Like, you can like both, and that, that doesn't necessarily make you a fake fan if you only like those or whatever. But I do feel like if you can't appreciate these, and I don't think you really like Godzilla movies, I think you just like good movies that have cool action sequences or have cool monsters or whatever. But I don't know. That's just how I feel.
Yeah, the way you guys have been explaining like the credits and stuff, you guys talked about it in a much more precise and particular way. So thank you for explaining all of that. I agree that like for Godzilla X, no, not Godzilla X Kong, Godzilla versus Kong, it was all about the situation we were in. And to see the critic score drop from like a 76 to a 54, which I guess is only about 25, is strange.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Miranda. I find it fascinating as well because, like I said, and once again, Udi explained it really well. It most likely was just a factor of when the movie came out. It was right after the pandemic. Theaters were just coming back. I think timing really did play an important role there. But like I said, I just feel like Godzilla X Kong is way crazier than Godzilla versus Kong. But Godzilla versus Kong had just as many, I feel, crazy moments as Godzilla X Kong did. That, yeah, I just find the difference in critic score just fascinating because, once again, I'll say it again, I feel like that a lot of the issues that critics had with this movie was those issues were also in Godzilla versus Kong. So I don't know. Like I said, like you said, it's fascinating. It's weird. Like, I'm trying to understand it, but I'm just gonna. But I think the explanation that Udi gave is perfect explanation. Honestly, like that's probably all just timing and whatnot.
And like Dan mentioned before, and like this is an interesting topic to bring up, and like we can go back to the movie after this, but yeah, like the whole critics versus like audience score thing. Like, I get that people always try to weaponize that when like scores don't go the way that they want it to, but at the end of the day, like kind of like how Miranda says, scores don't really matter. I mean, again, like critic scores are judging a movie objectively, because you can objectively score a movie. You can objectively point out execution and whatnot, because that is measurable. Obviously, not everyone has to agree. Lots of movies that are highly rated by critics because they're unique, they're different, whatever it is, like they don't sit well with general audiences. And that's okay. Like, they like that movie because it offers something unique and different, it has a unique voice, has great performances, blah 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 blah. But it doesn't mean that like you can't not like that and then also like not like this. Like, people can like both, like us. Like, we like movies that are, movies that probably general audiences wouldn't like. And we also like movies like this that are just off the wall, like insanity. And that's okay. It's fun. At the end of the day, there's no sort of like, you shouldn't hold like these scores super in high regard. Like, you like what you like, and it is what it is at the end of the day. So yeah. But going back to the movie though,
All right, so let's talk about Kong real quickly. So, personally, I don't think there's much to say about Kong in terms of design because I feel like his design is largely the same as it was in Godzilla versus Kong. Like, there's not really much different to him other than he gets a new tooth, but he also gets a very interesting upgrade. He gets this robotic arm, and he gets it because Shimu nearly like freezes his arm off. So Kong gets like this robotic arm, and I think it's okay. Like, I don't know. I'm just not the biggest fan of like these creatures like having armor that isn't already like natural to their biology. Because I don't know. I realize these are movies with a giant fire breathing lizard, a giant gorilla, and like telepathic underground civilizations. Yes, the premise is ridiculous. I understand that, but I just personally I don't like the idea of these creatures wearing like man-made armor because I think that's stupid. And once again, yes, this whole movie is stupid. I get that. But I personally feel like even if something is already stupid, there is a such thing as going too far. And I feel like if you put man-made armor on these monsters, I feel like that's going a little too far for me personally. And like the arm is fine. I think just having like one like robotic arm upgrade or whatever, like that's fine. I didn't mind it too much. It was kind of cool actually, and it was funny because when he first like powers it up, like me and Udi both noticed like lightning comes out of the arm. So it's like, oh, is he gonna have his lightning powers from freaking King Kong versus Godzilla 1962? But I mean, obviously he didn't, but still, it was funny to think about at the time because it's like, oh, I wonder if they would bring that in. Honestly, I would not put that past Wingard. Like Wingard probably would find a way to like give Kong his lightning powers from King Kong versus Godzilla. So but yeah, I thought the robotic arm, like it was fine, but I hope this is as far as we go when it comes to like putting armor on these monsters.
I thought it was actually pretty cool. I can see your point though, and be like, why are we doing this? This is silly. But thinking about it, it's like giving a dog like who can't use their back legs like wheels. Like it's just something to help the being survive and like function. That's kind of the way I saw it. But like if they just start adding like armor and stuff to the kaiju, I don't think I would be against that either. It would be kind of like How to Train Your Dragon in a way.
I agree with Miranda. For me, I mean, again, I'm kind of in the boat, and we talked about this in the last episode with Ghostbusters, that I feel like I'm much more lenient on things going a bit crazy in certain regards. Like for me, like the fist didn't seem too crazy. Like I was like, oh, interesting, okay. And I didn't understand. Like I was like, okay, I guess like he needs to power up a little bit. I think I think kind of what you're saying though. Like I do understand what you mean though, Dan, because like I do feel like it would matter what it looked like. Like if let's say in the next movie, Adam Wingard gives Kong a full suit of armor. If it was like a suit of knight armor, that would be probably too far for me. I'd be like, why are you making King Kong a knight? That's ridiculous. But if it was just like a mechanized exosuit, it'd be really stupid. But I feel like I could live with that more than like a knight, like a suit of armor like a knight would wear. Like that would be taking it too far, because that'd also be taking the movie in like a different art direction, and I feel like it would feel out of place.
This doesn't really add anything to the conversation, but I just have to say the king and queen needs knights. So, you know.
Hey, you're so right, Miranda.
I mean, sure. I mean, it'd be a weird twist and be really strange and like totally out of left field, but like they need knights.
I appreciate that for the joke, but I don't agree. I wouldn't want that in a movie, but I appreciate the joke.
Yeah, I don't think it would actually work, but
yeah. But yeah, and like I do get what you're saying though, Dan, because and I mean again, like it all comes down to personal preference, so I totally understand. And like if that line is like a fully mechanized Kong, like I totally understand that being too much. And also to that point, I do feel like giving him too much power armor or weapons or whatever, kind of takes away from his kaiju-ness, and like that turns him more into just like a mech. And while I do really want mechs like the Jaegers from Pacific Rim, just throwing that out there, in the MonsterVerse, like for the time being, like it is the MonsterVerse. It's about kaiju, not about the kaijus becoming mechs. Like obviously Mecha Godzilla, Mecha King Ghidorah, all the mechas versions of the kaijus notwithstanding, that doesn't count. That's another kind of different thing. Maybe it's drawing a line, I don't know, but like I count that as a different thing. But like kind of converting like King Kong to like an armored Kong, like he's not really King Kong at that point. I don't know, like there is a fine line, and I can agree with that. But like if in the next one he had 2 power fists, like I'd be okay with that. But yeah, I understand what you mean. But if you guys don't have any other thoughts about Kong, did you guys want to talk about Scar King or Shimu?
All right, it's time to talk about Lanky Kong. Yeah, I like to refer to Scar King as Lanky Kong because I mean he's Lanky Kong from the Donkey Kong franchise. Just this big, I mean he really is lanky because he's an orangutan and orangutans are pretty lanky, but yeah, I like to call Scar King Lanky Kong. But yeah, I thought Scar King was interesting. I liked his design, and then like the other apes in the Hollow Earth like looked really creepy. Like I really liked their design, and yeah, I thought Scar King was cool. I mean, I thought it was kind of interesting choice to give him like some bald patches, but he was a cool villain. I liked him.
Is because he doesn't really look like an orangutan. Like, he kind of just looked like an orange gorilla.
Well, his limbs are too long to be a gorilla, because gorillas don't have that long of limbs.
Yeah, but his face shape's not right for an orangutan.
He looks Scottish.
Scottish? What?
Huh?
He looks Scottish. He looks like if you put a kilt on him, he'd look like just a Scottish dude.
You're kind of right.
Like a hairy Scottish man. And it doesn't help he has like the bandoiler kind of thing, or I don't know how the F you say that, but like he has like his whip wrapped around him, but like that looks at the like this typical Scottish, like I mean I don't even know if that's a typical thing, I don't know, but like if you put a kilt on him, he would just look a big hairy Scottish man.
I mean, you do.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he's not wrong. I could kind of see it actually. But you do bring up a good point, Miranda. He doesn't really have the face of an orangutan, but his body type just really reminds me of one because of the long like limbs and like the orange fur. It just makes me think of an orangutan, but I don't know. He's a giant ape, so it's probably like a combination of like just different species or whatever when it comes to the creature design. But yeah, what did you think? What did you think of Scar King, Miranda?
I thought it was interesting. I kind of like the fact that he makes fun of Kong for having a fake tooth. Like,
Yeah.
look at this
good.
guy. That was just a strange thing that I was like, oh, okay, fascinating. But I think for being the main bad guy in this, he's interesting. I like how Kong like goes to Hollow Earth looking for others of his kind, and then he finds some, but it's not necessarily what he's expecting. And to have like the antagonist be this ape who was put into the Howl Earth and locked away was not what I was expecting for this random kaiju character. I truthfully wasn't really expecting much. I was just like, oh, he's a bad guy, they're gonna fight him. So the fact that they like actually gave him a kind of interesting story, I appreciate. And the design is creepy and I do not like him. Ever since I watched Nope, as a child, my favorite animal was like monkeys and apes, and I learned a whole bunch about them and like all this jazz. And then I watched Nope, and then I realized, yeah, apes are vicious creatures, and I never want to be near one, ever. So this movie just kind of like has an off feeling. I'm sure my experience of watching Nope has played into the apes in this movies and how I feel about them and their like creepiness. But overall, I think he is a very unique silhouette designed kaiju, and that's very much appreciated.
I kind of agree with what you guys have said. Not maybe so much I agree that like monkeys are a little scary. Like I think they're for the most part cute, but it is kind of, I mean, I guess it's kind of similar to people in a way. Not to talk about that really quick, but just like, people and monkeys can look really friendly, but then you never know how they're going to react, or if they're going to just have a random violent outburst. But moving on from that, I liked Scar King's design. I guess. I think like I was confused because like I didn't really watch the trailers that much. I just watched like the first few things that like came out. So like I thought fully that he was an orangutan, and so when I was watching, I was like, oh yeah, he's not really an orangutan. He just kind of looks like a skinny dude. And that was interesting. And I think it was an interesting sort of antithesis to Kong, who is super beefed up. Like, I think he looks even a little bit more beefed up than in the last movie. He looked almost like a Gears of War character to me. But like cooler for sure. But like sort of similar proportions to me. I don't know. I think that was like an interesting dynamic of having him be more like a slim, agile combatant versus like Kong's brute. However, I don't know. I did kind of like I get that if he had fought more fairly, like that's not the character. The character is meant to be like really Weasley and just like trying to dodge and evade and not really fight because he's not really that strong compared to the other guys, like without weapons or without help. So that's why Scar King utilizes Shimu and imprisons her and uses her power for himself. And also like that's why also like in the final fight he doesn't really fight Kong or Godzilla. He's just trying to use Shimu or tries to evade their attacks, but he doesn't really fight because when he does fight, then he just dies and loses right away because he's not as strong as them. So like in that regard, he was a little disappointing as like a main antagonist because he didn't really put up too much of a fight. But I thought he was interesting. I did kind of think it was interesting that his roar felt not very monkey-like, but it doesn't have to be because he's just a kaiju. So I did like his sound design though. I thought he sounded pretty cool. And then to bring back the point about the tooth thing, Miranda, I'm glad he got his comeuppance and also got to miss a tooth, and then Kong got to like smile and laugh at it, and him for losing a tooth as well, and not having a cool veterinarian to fix his tooth.
Yeah, that was a really good moment when like Kong punches him and he loses his tooth, and then Kong kind of laughs at him. That was pretty good. I did like that.
Getting to see Kong like smirk or smile a few times was fun. I don't know why. I was like, I never thought that would happen, but I was like, yeah, I like it. It's kind of cute.
Yeah, I like it too, and it really helps give Kong more character, and I think it's great. Are you guys ready to talk about Shimu, the ice dragon?
Yep.
Ice dragon. She's so cool. Get it? She's cool. Very, very cool. As in Frozen. Get it? Get it? Get it? Get it?
To meet you.
Yeah.
I had to make the pun. It was right there.
I don't
What killed
blame
the
you.
dinosaurs?
I don't blame you. Don't Schwarzenegger me now.
All right, I'm done. Bye.
But I want to talk about Shimu because I love Shimu's design. Shimu has a fantastic design for being an original creation that has never been seen in like a previous Godzilla movie. Now, if you remember back to our Godzilla 2014 review, when we were talking about the Muto, I said that I wasn't the biggest fan of the Muto design because the Mutos looked too alien to me. Like they looked too kind of like American science fiction. And when I think of a Godzilla monster, the Mutos are not what I picture. Shimu, on the other hand, Shimu would not be out of place in a Toho film. I love Shimu's design. She fits right in to the Godzilla universe. Like it's great. And I wonder like, I mean, that's different production teams, but still, like, I wonder, like, when they were designing Shimu, if they were, like, looking at other, like, Toho monsters, or heck, maybe they even hit Toho up for some, like, tips or like for some consultation or whatever. Like I don't know if that's the case, but you know, it's interesting to think about. But yeah, no, I love Shimu's design. She fits right in with the Godzilla franchise. She would not be out of place at all in like a Showa era film.
I agree. She fits in very, very, very ice. Get it? Ice, nice, ha, 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 ha. I'm just gonna try to never. But yeah, at first I didn't really see it, but then I was like, what if she was gray? And I was like, yeah, no, she totally fits. I think the white was throwing me off, but when you mentioned it, I was like, I had to think about it a second. I was like, yeah, no, she would fit. I love her blue and purple spikes, and I love like her whole design. And if she were to stand on her hind legs, she would be so tall. She'd be like the tallest kaiju like ever. I'm just glad they like included her, and I hope to see her more and to see like maybe what her personality is like. It's also really nice to have another girl kaiju in this franchise other than Mothra. So that's a plus in my book.
Okay, it's interesting you mentioned that because, like, I don't know why, but for some reason, gender seems to be such a huge deal in like the kaiju community because it was revealed a while ago that Shimu was female, and like there were so many people that were celebrating, like, yes, another female kaiju, yes, yes, and it's like, why is gender such a big deal? I mean, these are giant monsters. Like, we're here to just see them fight and to destroy cities. And like, I mean, personally, I don't care what gender they are. I'm just here to see cool giant monsters fight each other. But it's just so weird because it's such an interesting topic within the kaiju community. Because like, if you refer to Godzilla as female, like if you call Godzilla by she, her pronouns, you're going to trigger at least like 80% of the Godzilla franchise. So like, why is gender like such a big deal in the kaiju community? I don't know. It's really nothing really, but I just think it's interesting with how many people like value gender with these monsters.
I wonder if that's just the English speaking side of the kaiju like corner.
Nice reference there.
That one wasn't on purpose.
Nice.
But I wonder if it's the English side of the like fandom and whether or not they have that debate in like Japanese, because I think their pronouns are different in there. Whereas like Godzilla isn't he, he's just it. But we have assigned he to him. Although in Godzilla 1998, Godzilla is pregnant, so theoretically could be a she, but also a he. We don't know. Anyways, Udi, you were gonna say something.
I feel like it's not the same for obvious reasons that like I like will become very apparent when I start saying this, but I think it's in the same way of like how people like superheroes, and you know, people don't just want all superheroes to be men. They want superheroes to be women too, or they want them to be gay. And like, I know it's not what you're saying, but like, just like from my perspective, like that, I just feel like it's just that, like, even though it doesn't make it's not 1-to-1 because they don't have human anatomy and they're not humans or whatever. But I feel like at the end of the day, it's just like, I don't know, like, I could even see like someone like, let's say like, oh, that kaiju's from Mexico, that's so cool, like that sort of thing. And like, it doesn't matter because they're all just kaiju and they're just big monsters. But you know, I could understand that. I'm not saying this is like me or anything, but like I like from my perspective, like I feel like that's why maybe like I could understand people thinking that way.
I just want to make a quick comment. So, what you were saying earlier, Miranda, the Godzilla from Godzilla 1998 reproduces asexually, so it doesn't need a mate. So it's, I don't even know if you could give it a gender actually.
Being gender is a construct, so you know.
Yeah. So like
whatever it wants, it can have. But
yeah,
that version of Godzilla does reproduce asexually.
Yeah. And yeah, so like I said, you know, just to kind of go off of what you guys have been saying, I just find it interesting because me personally, I don't care what gender these things are. These are giant monsters. I'm here to see them fight, destroy cities, whether they're doing that with an extra X chromosome or with a Y chromosome. I don't care. But a lot of people in the kaiju community really do seem to care. So I don't know. Like I said, if you want to piss off the Godzilla franchise, refer to Godzilla as a she. You'll piss a lot of them off.
Yeah, I don't really want to piss them off.
Yeah.
We want them to like us.
So, I mean,
to listen to our content.
I stated in the first episode that I'm always going to refer to Godzilla as a he because, like, even though, like, the MonsterVerse, Godzilla's a he in the MonsterVerse, and I've just always have done that. But it's not because, like, I want Godzilla to be male. That's just it's just personal preference. Because, like you said, Miranda, Godzilla's an it. And all of the Toho movies, Godzilla is referred to as an it. He's never once been referred to as a he. And like maybe in like certain English dubs, they refer to him as a he, but that's because that's the English dub. That's not in the original Japanese script. So yeah, I mean, the crux of this is that I personally don't think gender matters too much when it comes to giant monsters, but that's just me.
So an interesting conversation, and of course it varies from kaiju fan to other ones and whether or not Godzilla is in X language or Y language or however it is. But I think we should slide back into talking about Shimu's design. Obviously I mentioned my thoughts.
I like Shimu's design. I agree. I feel like she fits in right up there with old monster designs, and I think they did a really great job of again making. I guess it's not exact, but like basically making like something old looking new, or like something that, you know, came from like an old thing. Like obviously Shimu is like a new character, so it's not exactly, but basically like again like the same thing I was saying earlier, like Adam Wingard just does a really great job of capturing the essence of like the older Godzilla films and making it new. So like making this new kaiju that is brand new but feels old is right in line with that. And yeah, I liked Shimu. I thought it was really cool. And I'm also really glad, because I got a little worried for a second there when like the fight started at the end, and then it was like Kong and Goji versus Scar King and Shimu, and I was like, oh no, like they're not gonna kill Shimu, are they? Like it's not her fault. She's just being in prison. She's being held captive and weaponized. Like please don't hurt her. It's not her fault. And then finally they broke her. It's like, oh, phew, okay, thankfully. Like I had a feeling that was gonna happen, but I was like, please no, don't let it just be like it's just big monster fighting time. I'm glad that they actually had some nuance there and you know added Shimu to the repertoire of other characters, and I'm very excited to see her come back in the next one. And I you know, it's fun that this cast of characters is growing. I'm excited who else they bring to the roster. And hey, Rodan's still alive. He's still out there somewhere. Adam Wingard, come on, bring him back.
Yes, please bring Rodan back. That would be amazing.
Yeah, because we need a giant ice dragon, a giant fire lizard, a giant flying pterodactyl, and then just a regular, very large ape.
I'm here for it.
The kaijus in the MonsterVerse are so different. It's very interesting with the things that they come up with. So we've covered a good chunk of the kaiju that, well, at least the three main kaiju in this. We haven't really talked about the child ape, I guess. I don't know his name. And I've mentioned Mothra. She's been mentioned throughout the whole conversation. So those are the last like two main kaijus we have to talk about.
Yes. So just to clarify for you, so the tiny Kong does have a name. His name is Suko. So yeah, I'll talk about both of them actually. So Mothra, oh man, dude, like it was so great to see Mothra again, and just the way that they set her up in this movie is just so like classic Showa era Godzilla, like being like, oh, the Iwi tribe is prophesized to get Godzilla so he can awaken Mothra to be the savior or whatever. It's like, yes, I love that idea. That's great. I freaking love it. It was so cool to see Mothra again. It was funny because when the first mention of Mothra was mentioned in the movie, like I did an audible gasp. I was like, as soon as they mentioned Mothra, I was like, what? like I got super excited and it was like, this must be how Marvel fans feel whenever like a character that they are excited to see gets shown off in an MCU movie. Like I know how they feel now. So it's just, so that was really cool. And yes, just, oh my God, like I love what they did with Mothra in the movie. Like, because in King of the Monsters, she had kind of this like whitish glow around her, but they make it golden in this movie, and it just works so much better for her. And let me tell you, I love Mothra's theme in this movie. It's so good. Like I was thinking back to last episode and how you guys were talking about Godzilla's theme and how you guys liked Godzilla's theme, but I was being like a crotchety old Godzilla fan was like, I want the Ifukube theme. And it's funny because after we came out with that episode, Adam Wingard actually, I don't know if it was with a recent interview or whatever, but he explained his reasonings behind why he chose to do their own theme for Godzilla instead of reusing the Ifukube theme. And then once I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, man, like for Mothra's theme, they don't reuse her classic like Mothra theme that was used in King of the Monsters and in like all the other Toho movies. They come up with their own theme for her, and I love it, man. It's so good. And it's like, yeah, like this theme embodies Mothra for me. And I understand where you guys were coming from when you were talking about how you liked Godzilla's theme from Godzilla versus Kong, because it's different and it fits the character. And yeah, that's what Mothra's theme is in this movie. It's different, but it fits the character. And I love it so much. Yeah, no, Mothra was great in this movie. I was so happy to see her, man. Like once again, my biggest issue is that she wasn't in the movie enough. She probably had just as little screen time in this movie than she did in King of the Monsters, but it was still great. I really wish that she would have been able to go up to the surface and join the final battle in Rio de Janeiro with everyone else. But oh well. We still got her a pretty cool sequence with her in the Hollow Earth. So that was really cool. Mothra was great, and I wish I could have seen this movie with you, Miranda, so I could have seen your reaction to Mothra. But
agreed.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you what it is. It was me pointing at the screen, being like, "Hey, look, there's Mothra," and me elbowing my sister, be like, "Look, it's a Mothra. It's Mothra."
Yeah.
I'm literally the Leonardo DiCaprio meme.
Yeah, I figured so.
Like, hey, there she is. I'm so happy she's in this film. I'm so happy she doesn't die.
Yeah,
but I would have loved her to see. I would have loved to see her be included in the battle in Rio.
Guys, this movie broke the trend. They didn't kill Mothra off. It broke the trend.
Now,
About darn time.
If we could just keep her alive for like ever, that'd be great.
Give her more screen time, please. Give her more screen time next time. But yeah, no. Without a doubt, Mothra was one of the best surprises for this movie. And I really hope, because there's rumors that, well, I think Wingard has said that he wants to do a trilogy. So I really hope if we get another movie that we get more surprises like Mothra, like we maybe Rodan, like Udi mentioned, or maybe another Toho monster. Like I really hope we get that. But yeah, Mothra was great. Suko was fine. Suko actually wasn't what I was expecting at first, because I thought, just based off the trailer, that Kong was just going to find this like lost little baby ape or whatever, and he was going to become a father figure for him. But that's actually not what happens at all. In fact, Suko attacks Kong when he first sees him, and it was really funny because like Kong's trying to be all gentle because he's a little kid ape, he's trying to be all gentle or whatever, and then Suko like bites his finger and then runs away, and like Kong grabs his axe and starts chasing after him. I thought that was really funny because it's kind of like Kong going, "You little shit, get back here," like, so like, I thought that was funny. And then I liked Kong's little adventure that he had with Suko, like Suko trying to like get rid of him by like having that sea monster attack him and whatnot. And just the part where Kong uses Suko as a weapon was so goddamn funny. Like I legitimately like belly laughed that entire time because I just was not expecting that, and it was so funny. It was amazing. Like it was great. It was great.
If only Godzilla had done to Manila what Kong did to Prince Zuko,
Yeah.
then Son of Godzilla would have been enjoyable.
Oh my god, that'd be so funny to see like the Godzilla do that to Manila. Oh my god.
And especially if it had been in that movie, like Manila would have been
my
like a
god.
toy.
Yeah. That would be so good.
It would have looked like those ragdoll like scenes in movies and shows that you've talked about before, where like it's so funny because it's literally just not a person, but they like do a thing where it's just this supposed person or being or whatever it is, just like flail about because it's just like an inanimate object.
Oh, did you say Prince Zuko?
I did, yeah, Prince
As in-
Zuko.
As in Prince Zuko.
I didn't really think about that. Yeah, his name kind of does sound like Zuko, yeah.
As soon as you said that, I was like, Avatar, The Last Airbender. Check out that episode on the podcast. But yeah, just to give my quick thoughts on Prince Zuko. I turned around on him. Like I thought initially like he was just gonna be annoying like Manila. And not to be a hater, but I anyway. And so I was like, oh no, like I thought it was funny that because I kind of had a similar idea of like what his role in the movie is going to be to Dan. I wasn't like necessarily dead set on that, but I just thought like, yeah, he was going to encounter him and be like, oh, okay. And then I thought he'd like lead him, like maybe he got lost from the ancient ape civilization that was actually hidden away somewhere. And then he was going to help Kong find it and whatever, and going to become his like pseudo dad, which to some degree he kind of did. But I thought it was going to be like more of an emphasis on that. And so when you get the scene with him and all of a sudden he just bites him in the finger and runs away, I was like, what? And yeah, and so like he started out kind of like, oh boy, all right, cool, because I don't know, like he wasn't annoying, but like I didn't really like him that much. And then I turned around on him. Like I thought, I was like, you know what, I like him in Kong, he's kind of fun, and like I liked his little screeches, like like I don't know, it just sounded way different from Kong, and I just thought it was really really funny. Especially like towards the end where he like peeks into the portal and he sees Kong's axe. He's like, all right, well, I got to do what I got to do. And then he just like jumps in and he does like his little screech, and then he grabs the axe, and then goes in, and then he goes and helps in the final fight, whatever. But yeah, I liked him. I thought he was a fun little addition that I was not expecting. So I liked Prince Zuko.
You know, while I'm making the Donkey Kong references, with Scar King and Lanky Kong, freaking King Kong and Zuko are Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. So there you go. You got Lanky Kong, you got Diddy Kong, you got Kong. This is the Donkey Kong Country movie that everybody wants.
The one we never knew we needed, but we deserved.
Exactly.
All they need is hover cars.
Yep.
That'd be fun.
Be interesting.
And then just to bring it back to Mothra real quick, because I mean, we talked about her a little bit earlier, but I didn't give like my full official thoughts. Super happy she was back, just like you guys. I got super excited when I saw her drawing on the Iwi like wall. I thought that was like, oh yes. Well, it wasn't a drawing; it was like a thing in the wall. It doesn't matter.
It was a carving.
Carving. There we go. That's the word. Thank you. And so I got super excited and hyped with that, and then she like. It doesn't matter that it makes absolutely no sense how she just like comes into being. I don't care. It's a whole dumb movie. It's fine. It's fun. Whatever. It doesn't matter. And she looks so cool. She sounds so cool. Her theme is like fantastic. Oh, I was so happy to see her. And like every time that there was a shot with the three of them, it felt like watching a DC movie with the Trinity for the first time, even though the movie was bad. But like, I mean, this movie's way better than Batman vs Superman. It's a lot more fun. But it just felt so special to see all three of them in the Monsterverse like together, and just like it was so cool. And I'm so glad that Mothra didn't freaking die, and I really hope she doesn't die in the next one either. And I just hope that she finally gets to just be cool and just live alongside Godzilla and Kong. Please, God, please. But yeah, I really liked Mothra in this one. Well, I like her in all the ones, but she was really cool here.
Yes, she is very, 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 very cool. I'm so happy she's in it. I basically said a lot of my thoughts on Mothra already. But like I'm so happy she's in this. But I have not talked about Zuko yet. So I am glad he is not as annoying as Manila because I really dislike Manila. He sounds like a dying donkey and he sucks. So I was a little worried about what they were gonna do with Zuko this in this story, and I basically agree with both of you guys. So I don't really have much to add on him other than what's already been said. But since Zuko's story is so connected and his actions are connected to Kong, I think we should talk about Kong's story and how he wants to find others like him. And when he does it, probably not what he was expecting. And like, there's interesting ways that they show his thoughts and feelings throughout the whole film. So, and like the way they communicate, the apes all communicate is interesting to me. I think they use a lot of facial expressions and body movement and body language to like tell us what is going on so we can see and understand what is going on. So Dan, I think you have some thoughts about Kong's story. Do you want to jump off from there?
Yeah, I want to talk about Kong's story. So what they do with Kong in here is so cool to me because there's not a single kaiju movie out there that has done what they do with Kong's story. Because like most I've already kind of said this. I've already kind of said this before, but most kaiju movies are just the kaijus aren't really characters. They're just monsters. They're just monsters that are there to destroy the city for the military to fight and for the protagonists to like think up of ways, okay, how do we stop this thing? Like that's what most kaiju movies are. They're actually giving the kaiju in these movies character. Like it's cool. They're telling stories. Like we get an actual like story with Kong. Like he's in the Hollow Earth. He's looking for others that are like him. He comes across Zuko. Zuko leads him into a trap. He's like, "All right, I know there's more people out there like me. You're gonna lead me to those people." So like we follow that, and it's so cool. Like it's interesting. I've never seen something like that before, and I really like it. Like and then when we get to Kong like finding the other apes, there's more to the story there. We see like these apes are kind of like live under a very like fearful rule from Scar King. We see that Scar King, he controls Shimu with that little like bone like device that he has, and we see how much of like a just this like terrifying like terrible ruler that he is. You know, he kills like this ape that Zuko had like a connection with. Like he just straight up kills that ape just because he can, and like the other apes are like kind of fearful of him. And another interesting thing, I don't know if you guys caught on to this, but it looked like Scar King had his own like mistresses as well. Like in his throne there was like other apes that had like children with them that were like standing there in fear. So like did he have like mistresses too? Like it's interesting to think about. Just they gave these characters well, they are characters. They gave these kaiju so much character, and it's just so cool because yeah, you can insinuate what they're thinking, like what's happening in the scene. And I like it. I want to see more of stories like this. And like if we can get more Kong movies that are in the style of like this, of giving these apes like character and emotions and like giving them stories, like I would love to see more Kong movies that are like this. Like I'd be down for it. So I really liked what they did with Kong and his story. It was cool.
I agree. It is very cool. I think, as I've mentioned before, Kong is one of the more humanized, personified kaiju that we have, who has the most story around him. And to bring that into this one again really helps with the story of this movie. A lot of the MonsterVerse is kind of lacking in that department, in my opinion. So for them to continue that from Godzilla versus Kong and have like a through line to keep things consistent between these two benefits this franchise, these characters, a lot. And I would love to see them do this with more characters other than Godzilla, because he is the other main guy we know the most about. And like when it comes to Kong and his expressions and emotions and actions, you can see this in Kong, you can see that in kind of in Godzilla too, and especially the other apes. I think the way they emote is done really well and really helps show what is going on and how these characters are communicating, because basically a good chunk of this film is a silent film because they don't have dialogue, they don't got speech bubbles, like they're not using words, so they have to rely on like the movement and action of these creatures. And I don't know if they mocapped them and there's a performer behind these creatures, but if there is, they did a great job at like capturing that and translating that through the CGI. One thing that like popped into my head is, so there's Disney's live action in quotation marks Lion King, and a lot of the thing is like, oh, we can't give creatures emotions, like animals don't emote like that. But now we have giant kaiju who can like emote and show emotion, and it's like no excuse to not do that with CGI characters because they clearly can do that, and it was done well in this film.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys have been saying about the like the Kong story, and I really liked all like the nonverbal storytelling. I feel like it's something I never expected from one of these movies, and obviously like again doesn't make the movie like some sort of cinematic masterpiece or anything, but like I think it really adds something interesting to the kaiju genre and to the monsterverse, and really, like you guys said, like really fleshes out these kaijus, not just monsters and titans, but as characters, and like helps establish their personalities and who they are. So I really like that. I didn't pick up or I didn't notice that detail that you mentioned, Dan, but I'll definitely keep an eye out for it for the next time I watch the movie, because that is interesting. The detail that you mentioned about like the Scar King and him like potentially having mistresses with children or whatever, because like I mean I don't know, it's just like an interesting detail of like, because it's kind of like this typical like big bad like warlord guy. I don't know, but yeah, like it's just an interesting like humanizing element, I guess, to these kaiju, and add to the more storytelling that's like going on. So yeah, interesting. In sort of a similar regard, in terms of the overall storytelling in the movie and how it's kind of different than like the other movies, at least in the MonsterVerse. I guess this isn't really that crazy different from other movies in the kaiju genre or in Godzilla movies or whatever, but what did you guys think of the balance of Godzilla, or I guess like his amount of screen time in the movie? Did you feel like, I mean, it definitely focuses more on Kong than Godzilla, but do you feel like that affected you guys? Do you feel like it bugged you? Because like just traditionally, I do feel like Godzilla isn't in his movies for that long. Obviously, I feel like his either lack of appearance or his appreciated appearances kind of depends on how he's used in the movies. But traditionally, he's really not in movies for that long. Like even like in movies where he's like the main character. I saw a stat the other day where it was like someone wrote down all like the runtime appearances of him in his movies, and a lot of them were like around like 8 minutes. And this movie's around 8 minutes as well. So like it's pretty on par with a lot of his other appearances in other movies. But I guess maybe because we had so much of a focus on Kong, it feels like way less.
So yeah, like screen time has always been a huge topic of debate with Godzilla movies because, like Udi said, traditionally Godzilla doesn't have a lot of screen time in his movies. Like I think the film that he has the longest amount of screen time in is Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2, and he only has like around like 25 minutes of screen time. So screen time isn't the issue. It's about how well the director and the editors can make it so it doesn't feel like there's not enough, because if they can balance it out really well, you won't really notice the lack of screen time. Like, everybody noticed the lack of screen time in Godzilla 2014, because as much as I love and respect Gareth Edwards as a filmmaker, he didn't do a very good job of balancing Godzilla scenes with the Muto and human scenes. So it was very much felt in that movie. But I feel like for this movie, I wasn't that bothered by it. I mean, I did notice that whenever Godzilla showed up, like, he got a lot less time devoted to him than like Kong per se. But like Miranda already said, this is a Kong movie. It just has Godzilla in it. Like, whether or not they do just want to make Kong movies, but they want to put Godzilla in there to get butts and seats is up to debate. But yeah, if you look at this film as just being a Kong movie and like Godzilla being a side character in it, it's not it doesn't bother me that much. But it is kind of advertised as a Godzilla movie though, because Godzilla, his name is in the movie's title. But I wasn't too bothered by his screen time because I was really interested in Kong's story. Like, Kong's story, and also like the human story as well, kind of interested me to the point where, okay, Godzilla getting less screen time didn't really bother me that much. But I will say, and I mentioned this to Udi earlier, because when I was watching this film, I was thinking, I wonder what kid me would think of this. And kid me would probably be very annoyed that there was more Kong than Godzilla. Because when I was a kid, I was a Kong hater. Like, because like my uncles told me about like the original King Kong versus Godzilla and like how King Kong won in that movie. And like, me being a kid, it's like, what? King Kong could never beat Godzilla. So I was always kind of a Kong hater. So kid me would probably be annoyed, but like adult me didn't really care too much, because like, I mean, the scenes that we got Godzilla in were cool. And I was interested in what was going on with Kong anyway. So like, I personally wasn't too bothered by it.
That's interesting to me, because like, you are such a big fan of Godzilla, and I was like, I wonder if the lack of Godzilla like bugged him or anything. But that's interesting to learn that it didn't really bug you. For me, I didn't mind the lack, quote unquote, of Godzilla throughout this. I think the difference between this one and like other ones is like, even though Godzilla doesn't have the much screen time, he is talked about or is being studied or being tracked, so it feels like he's in it more because of what the characters are doing. Whereas this one, they're just like, yeah, we'll cut to like Earth and like some dudes in a submarine and some people in like Hong Kong looking and surveying Godzilla throughout the film. I don't really think this movie needed a Godzilla plot necessarily, because it is so focused on Kong, and I don't actually mind it. It's about time that other kaiju got a little star light.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I mean, I agree with both of you guys. I don't feel like there was necessarily a lack of Godzilla. He was kind of interspersed throughout, and I liked the constant updates. Like, it was a clever way of, you know, keeping him incorporated in the story and not making it too long between either references or appearances of Godzilla. And again, I feel like it's one of those things of, because we have so much Kong here, it feels like there's less Godzilla. But I feel like if there was less Kong, or if there was like no Kong, that people wouldn't care as much, maybe, because like, they, you know, there wouldn't be as much of a disparity between their appearance time. However, I can also understand people who felt like this movie was going to be like a kind of like a buddy cop movie. Like, I can understand being disappointed that they weren't really together until the end. But I mean, it makes sense. Like, for people who have watched the older Godzilla movies, like, that's not, they don't really do that. Like, they'll team up at the end, but usually, again, like we talked about earlier, like, Godzilla will usually fight to the death almost. He'll be like, no, I hate you guys, blah, 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 blah. And then finally, like, he'll come around like, all right, I'll help you guys. And then they fight together. Very, like, just because he has to, but not because he's like, oh yeah, we're buddies. So, Like, I understand maybe people, like, some people might have wanted that, but, like, it makes sense that it was like this and not like that, because that's just not really how these movies are. But that being said, um, I didn't mind Godzilla's runtime in this movie, and this isn't like a huge nitpick for me, but I will say the one aspect in regards of like runtime with kaiju was that I was disappointed that we didn't get more of the both water serpent fights, either the one with Tiamat or the one that Prince Zuko tricks Kong into getting into the fight with, because I feel like those kaiju designs were really cool, and they were unlike things like we haven't seen any kaiju like that in modern times, I guess, because like as Dan pointed out to me after we got out of the theater, there were older like kaiju that were like that in the older movies, like snakes, I guess, or whatever, or dragons. I mean, King Ghidorah's a dragon, but you know what I mean. But anyway, like I was just disappointed that we didn't get more of those fights and that they were pretty abridged. But I'm assuming it was sort of like a budgetary like VFX thing, so I understood. But that was like the only part where like I wish we'd gotten more runtime of those fights. And yeah, so it is what it is.
To add on to what Udi was saying about Titanus Tiamat, Tiamat in my headcanon is the MonsterVerse version of Manda, because it looks like Manda, it reminds me of Manda, it's Manda. So especially like she really reminded me of like the Godzilla Final Wars version of Manda, especially the way she like curls around Godzilla to like try to choke him out. So yeah, the Titanus Tiamat is Manda.
Hey, you turned me around, so I agree. Why not? And so, speaking of balance, another aspect that is interesting about the movie is the balance that it struck between the kaijus fighting in different places. So, for me personally, I felt like this movie was probably going to take place mostly in the Hollow Earth, and that way they'd get away from having to, have scenes on the surface, and they won't have to worry about like too many cities being destroyed, and I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about that. But thankfully, that wasn't the case, and they had a really nice balance of set pieces in the Hollow Earth, but also on Earth's surface, and also like showing different kaiju, and also showing humans and their place in all this and everything. So, how did you guys feel about like the balance in terms of that aspect of the film? Like, did you feel like it was well balanced and showed enough of different places and like these different characters and the humans and everything, or do you feel like you would have preferred them being in one place more than the other, or et cetera, et cetera? Like, what do you guys think?
I think it was done well. Like it's okay. So I have a point. But so like the first couple fights that Godzilla is like fighting at, like iconic locations that are around the world, just reminded me of the kaiju dating sim game I have. I was just like, oh look, he's just going on dates with other kaiju. But as for balance,
it's a hell of a date, Jesus Christ.
yeah, in the game what you do is you go on dates to iconic places, and then you destroy the iconic places like the Eiffel Tower or the pyramids. So
Yeah, but like just referencing the beginning of the movie, Godzilla like destroys Titanus Scylla. If that's a date, like holy crap.
okay. Yeah, so like that popped into my head as I was watching it, but to like actually talk about the balance, I think it is done well, because you start off with some Godzilla, and then you switch, and then you go to this, and then you go to the humans, and then you go to like Trapper the veterinarian and the human stuff there, but it's still also kind of kaiju related. And then you go into Hollow Earth and you see this and that, and like it keeps you, at least for me, it kept me engaged the entire time. And I know balance is something that we've talked about or have mentioned before. So I think there's a really good amount of kaiju fighting with a really good and interesting Kong and human story. And we do spend a lot of extended time in the kaiju world, especially with Kong. Like we're in that environment for a long time. So this is more on the lines of CGI, but since we're in there and we're in the How Earth and we're not really jumping back to Earth and real things, like the whole thing feels way more cohesive to me than like any of the other stuff. And that comes from like the balance of, okay, we're gonna maybe do How Earth a bit more. I guess this isn't really bound. The counterbalance, I guess, of we're gonna stay in How Earth a little more than we're actually gonna be on Earth.
And just to add in my 2 cents to this, yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like there was a good balance with all the settings and like interspersing different characters and throughout. And I mean, again, I already gushed enough about Trapper. I thought he was really fun, but all the characters were really fun, and just getting to see like the different environments and do all that was enjoyable and a blast. And I remember feeling again like I also still had the thought, because like the whole thing at the end, the whole setup was, oh, we can't let him get to the portal and get to the surface, and I thought they were going to succeed in that initially, like without getting to the surface. I was like, oh man, like this is cool and this will probably be a cool fight, but it's gonna suck not getting to see like a city get destroyed at the end. And nope, we got it. We got another city destroyed at the end, and it was kind of funny because I didn't know Rio de Janeiro was gonna be in the movie. Like it's not that big of a deal to me. It's just like another big city to destroy. Like same how like the last movie had Hong Kong be destroyed. But it was just cool because I don't know if any of the other kaiju movies have ever done anything with Rio. But I was like, oh, that's cool. Just another city to destroy. So then another city to burn. For those of you who understand the reference. But yeah, I just thought it was like a fun, like, yeah, like that's cool. Like another interesting setting for these kaiju to utterly wreck and demolish to the ground. So yeah, I thought it was all pretty well balanced, and I thought they did a good job of switching between all the different elements and whatnot.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I thought the fights were pretty well balanced between like the slower scenes where we're, looking at our main trio of human characters, and then like the other scenes that focus maybe just on Kong and Suko and whatnot. But yeah, I thought the fights were pretty well balanced. The fights, of course, were awesome. Like it's just amazing how much these movies have improved with their fights. Like we went from always cutting away from the action and being in super dark areas from Godzilla 2014 to these very brightly lit, bombastic, like crazy fight scenes. Dude, Godzilla suplexes Kong in this movie. Like it's amazing. Like it's on the same level as like the tail slide move from Godzilla versus Megalon. Like it just was not never in my life did I ever think I would see Godzilla suplex someone, and it is so stupidly awesome. I love it, man. So like yeah, I agree with you guys. I thought the fights were very well balanced in this movie. And it helps, and that's honestly what helps make this movie arguably the best film in the MonsterVerse, is just how well done they are with balancing all the different elements that this movie has.
Does this satisfy your desire for a giant monster fight, Stan?
Yeah, I would say it does. Yeah.
That's good to hear.
But I will say though, one thing that once again, the one aspect that the MonsterVerse still has to improve on for me personally are destruction scenes. We still haven't seen a scene where Godzilla goes around and stomps on a city. Granted, there are small little snippets in this movie, like when Godzilla first arrives at the Roman Colosseum, and then like I think he's like when he's going up to Kong, like we see small little short clips of him like just running through cities and people are like running away or whatever. But I still have yet to see just like maybe like a 2 to 3 minute scene of Godzilla just laying waste to a city. There's still time. There's still time. So we'll see. We'll see what if Wingard makes another movie. We'll see what he cooks up.
We will definitely have to wait and see. I hope they do make another one. And there isn't that much destruction in this one. But again, we're in Hollow Earth most of the time, so the destruction we do see is usually from Godzilla. So I did like the end battle in Rio, though. I found that one very interesting. And it's kind of weird that I've seen 2 movies in a row where the main, like, oh no, tragic weather event thing is happening, was freezing the ocean. So I don't know if Ghostbusters and Godzilla coordinated that, but it's kind of weird that it happened twice.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's the Doofenshmirtz quote where it's like, if I had a nickel for every time this happened, I'd have 2 nickels, which is
a weird.
yeah, it's like, which is weird that I don't remember the quote.
What?
It's not a
yeah.
lot, but it's weird that it happened
Yeah,
twice.
There
yeah,
you
which is
go.
not a lot, but yeah, it's weird that it happened twice. Yeah.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
I was gonna say that I agreed with you, Miranda. I had the same thought. Just odd that it happened twice in the same year and in such rapid succession.
So, anyways, I think it's about time for our lizard fact of the day. Today's lizard is the Chinese crocodile lizard. It's a semi-aquatic lizard found in the cool forests of southeastern China and northeastern Vietnam. They spend much of their time in shallow water or overhanging branches and vegetation. They are known to eat tadpoles, small fish, occasionally frogs and lizards, as well as worms, spiders, and shrimp. The Chinese crocodile lizard is an endangered lizard due to habitat loss caused by mining, small-scale farming, and dam construction, leading the water flows to change. So that's our lizard fact of the day. Let's move on to ratings. Udi, what would you give this movie?
So I think I rated basically all the MonsterVerse movies this way, and I regret that a little bit. I don't remember what I rated Godzilla. Me personally, if I could change that rating, I'd put that at I'd say a 3, maybe 2.5 or 3. I don't remember what I gave it. I think I did give it 3. Doesn't matter. But that being said, again, as much as I love this movie, and I really did have an absolute blast with it, I think, like I said, I think it's my favorite movie of the MonsterVerse. This doesn't necessarily make the other ones that I appreciated just as much, or like a little bit less, I guess. But like, doesn't make them lesser movies in my eyes. So like, I'll still watch King of the Monsters. I'll still watch Godzilla vs Kong. I still really like them for what they are and all the fun that they have within them. But that being said, I'm going to give this a 3.5, a very strong 3.5. I think it did everything I wanted it to do, but even more so, because like I wasn't sure about some of the perceived story elements that I thought it was going to have, or some of the perceived character things it's going to have. And it was just an absolute joy to watch on screen. The crazy sequences and action and fighting and all of that, just an absolute blast at the movie theater. If you get the chance, check it out while it's in theaters. Enjoy the glorious sound systems. Enjoy the glorious crispy screens. If you're looking just for like a turn off your brain fun movie, like, you will not be disappointed. At least I hope you won't be, because this is a ton of fun.
Very nice. How about you, Dan?
I am also going to agree with Udi. I'm going to give this an equally as strong 3.5 out of 5. Yeah, man. I had a blast watching this movie. The fight scenes were great. I loved some of the ridiculousness of it. Once again, it took me back to some of the older Godzilla films I loved as a kid. And yeah, it's a very satisfying kaiju movie to watch. I will say it probably is my favorite in the MonsterVerse. Like, I would probably watch this over King of the Monsters or Godzilla vs Kong, and that might be recency bias talking. I don't know. We'll have to see. But I really enjoyed myself with this one. Yeah, if you're a big Godzilla fan, please don't hesitate to go out and see this. Yeah, if you're looking for a dumb, fun action movie to watch with the family, go out and see this. if you're a Godzilla fan who's only seen -1 and loved -1 for what it was, probably don't watch this because you're probably not going to like it. So, but yeah, like this was great. I loved it. What about you, Miranda?
I'm going to give it a 4 because it's fun, and that's higher than I rated any of the other MonsterVerse movies, so that just makes sense. And obviously, a majority of those points come from the fact that Mothra is in this movie, and there's neon lights. It's very silly, it's very colorful, and it's a good time. So I'm going to do math here. So the Atomic Lizard's average score is a 3.6666 repeating. After some discussion, we're going to round that down to a 3.5. Thank you so much for joining us and listening to our conversation about Godzilla X Kong: A New Empire. If you're interested in hearing more, check out our previous episodes, and as always, you can find us on Instagram at Atomic Lizards Pod and on Letterboxd at Atomic_Lizards.